back to our second session, the panel discussion on how to build a successful innovation ecosystem. In today's world, innovation isn't just something that's nice to have. It is an imperative in any organization, big or small, that hopes to thrive. But how can companies structure themselves to ensure that innovation takes place naturally? And what impact will the shifting technological landscape have on the ability of companies to innovate? Let's listen to this powerful panel. On behalf of GCPIT, let me extend a very warm welcome to all the panelists and also the moderator, Mr. Biju Balagopal. Mr. Biju is the CEO of Renodo Consulting Private Limited. He has 25 years of industry experience in technology, innovation, management, design thinking, technical sales, M&A, etc. He's a BTech in mechanical engineering and MBA in finance. He is also a guest faculty for innovation and design thinking at various universities in Bangalore, Pune, and Hyderabad. Mr. Biju is the winner of the prestigious Innovation Consultant of the Year in 2017. The panelists who have joined us today are Ms. Caitlin Reimers-Brumming. She is a Senior Vice President at Mass Challenge Boston, where she leads an early-stage organization. Prior to Mass Challenge, Caitlin led the Impact Collaboratory at the Harvard Business School, a multifaceted effort to develop world-class academic leadership on the topic of investing in the 21st century, including sustainable ESG and impact investing. Next, let me welcome Ms. Jeanette Odo. She is the head of innovation at Access Bank, the largest bank in Nigeria and Africa's leading bank by customer base branch network. She possesses a wealth of experience ranging from innovation, analytics, banking operations optimization, and process improvement. Charged with leading the company's innovation journey and creating an innovative culture, her current role has seen her catalyze innovative changes and apply design thinking methodologies in bank-wide innovation projects. She has led both incremental and disruptive. A UN speaker, Harvard and MIT alumna, Jeanette is an international award-winning innovator. She is Innovation Leader's Most Valuable Player, Impact Awards 2020 winner, and the only African and Nigerian to win the award since its inception. Let me introduce Mr. Malam Shakir, who is the Managing Director of DreamIt Ventures. As the Managing Director of DreamIt Secure Tech Program, his job involves working with cybersecurity startups from around the world to realize their full potential, refining their positioning and go-to-market strategy, scaling their sales operations, and mapping out their capital needs. Neil is a recognized leader in cybersecurity and same technology. Prior to joining DreamIt, Neil spent the prior 20 years developing and bringing innovative cybersecurity solutions to the market. Next, we have Mr. P. Somarajan. He is a graduate in mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi and postgraduate in management from IIM Bangalore. P. Somarajan has over 30 years of experience in the industry, both in India and abroad. After a rich and versatile global experience with reputed multinationals that are market leaders in manufacturing and engineering, he turned to consulting in strategic management, performance optimization, and technology domains. He has been associated with the senior management of FIT IIT Delhi over the last 6 years to strengthen industry engagement, innovation programs, incubation activities, and science park projects of IIT Delhi. Now, let us listen to this panel. Over to you, Biju.
Thank you, Aparna, for that great introduction. So, pleasure to be with all of you eminent leaders here today. So, as Aparna said, I'm Biju Balagopal, and the moderator for this session. So, to all the audience, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you are logging in from. And a very warm welcome to the first panel discussion of Global Innovation, Incubation, and Entrepreneurship Summit 2021. So as we all know, with today's dynamic and demanding market conditions and the pace at which technology changes, it is difficult for organizations to survive unless they innovate constantly, right? So we all have seen how innovative organizations could turn around quickly during the pandemic and lockdown time, and how the rest of them were kept struggling. So today in this panel, we'll be discussing about how we can build efficient innovation ecosystems. Yeah, so without wasting much time, let us get into the panel discussion. So as usual, ladies first. So Kate, I will start with you. As I said, today we'll be discussing about how companies can structure themselves to ensure that innovation takes place naturally, and what impact will the fast-shifting technological landscape have on the ability for companies to innovate. Okay. So the first question to you, Kate, is: do you think it is important for companies to innovate and invest in the latest technologies? What is your view?
Thank you so much, and good morning from Boston. It's a delight to be a part of this discussion. So, as you mentioned, technology and digital disruption continues to advance at a breakneck speed, leading all industries into a future where business agility counts just as much as having strong core technologies and an experienced C-suite. So we're at a key juncture in history. In 1960, the average lifespan of a company on the S&P 500, for example, was 60 years, and today it's 20 years, right? That's one of the drivers why 80% of leaders at large corporations believe that innovation is absolutely crucial, not only for business growth, but for business survival. With that said, I think, as you're alluding to, and as I look forward to discussing with my other esteemed panelists, is it's not easy for large companies to be agile, to take part of their resources and teams and talents and point them at the uncertainty that is innovation. We see from where we sit. I should have introduced myself. I am with Mass Challenge, as was said. We're a global nonprofit with the mission to equip bold innovators to disrupt the status quo. We work at the intersections of startups, ecosystems, innovation ecosystems, and then corporate. And so we have an outsider's view from the work we do with about 100 corporate partners. And what we see is that it takes intentional, systematic, and resourced effort led from the top to create the culture, the systems, the business practices that are required to take risk, to experiment, increasingly to collaborate outside of your organization. So innovation is not just led by internal R&D centers, as it was in the past, but about bridging to the outside world to scout and sense and bring in amazing teams and technologies that are out in the world. And then also to adopt technology, even when it may not be proven. So I'll highlight a couple of things we see as the types of scaffolding which can help this, but I'll keep it short because I know that there are others who have great additions. One is increasingly we see companies setting up innovation units. I think one estimate is that 20 people is sort of average for a large company. That's a big investment in a team that's intended to specifically look for innovation, whether it's core or transformational. So that's one. The second part and a subset of that innovation unit is the growth of scouting groups. So members of the team that are supposed to be out in the world every day looking for the trends that are disruptive, the teams that the company should be working with, or the technologies that they should be bringing in-house. And we spend a lot of time with those scouting teams, helping them to connect to startups that may be able to make a meaningful difference in their business. Very much related to that idea of the scouting is, the growth of the M&A side of the business to include venture arms. So some estimates say that, up to 75% of Fortune 100 companies now have some sort of venture capital or early stage investment arm to extend their reach and allow them to experiment, learn, and then also invest in technologies that can make a difference. The other thing I'll add is that the internal culture piece is just as important as finding great technologies. In some ways, if not more important, we often hear there's an organ reject. So the scouting teams are trained, maybe they're pulled from venture capital, they love the external innovation world, they bring a company in-house, and the R&D folks say, not built here, right? Or too much risk, it's too early. And so just as important is large corporates building the innovation culture and practices that allow people to look for innovation and bring it into their work, their planning, their strategy. So I'll pause there and look forward to hearing from others.
Yeah, definitely. So, Janet, coming to you, you being the head of innovation and a leading bank in Nigeria, what is your view on the importance of companies need to innovate constantly? Melam, the next question comes to you. So I, being an innovation consultant myself, I see a lot of companies struggling to innovate effectively, in spite of they wanting to do it, aspiring to be innovative company, to be very innovative. So, why do you think companies have this inherent struggle to innovate efficiently?
Sure. Let me take a stab at that. Just a quick introduction. You covered most part of it, but at where we sit at GIIE Ventures, we invest in innovative companies. So we directly deal with innovation, but as part of that process, we actually work with a lot of organizations ourselves, to accelerate these companies. So we work closely with corporate partners and innovation teams globally. Although the major focus for us is in the United States, at least we require the companies to be kind of U.S. entities just because of our structure. So coming back to your question, right? Why are companies struggling to innovate? I think there are a few reasons, but one of the reasons I'd like to highlight is access. The second could be accountability, and if they're not getting outcomes, and third could be just a reason with entrepreneurial leadership. So I'll try to address those briefly. So first on access, right? All companies, right, whether they're big, small, public, private, profit, non-profit, all need to have access to the technological resources, I would say during all 4 stages of innovation, which are broadly defined as the ideation stage, the foundational research piece, then the prototype, right, taking a decision to invest in the idea, the product development, and then finally the commercializations. And they need support at all of these stages. And how do you get that access? In short, it takes a whole ecosystem. I think that's why we have this conference. A big part of this ecosystem is the government. The education institutions play a big role. The private investment community, which I'm part of, angels, VCs, private equity firms, and then, of course, the companies themselves. But it does take the government to prime that ecosystem and absorb some of the risks, especially associated with the foundational long pole research. So the US is a great example of a vibrant ecosystem. Without the support of the US government, which spends nearly $5 billion annually in small business innovation research, what we refer to as SBIR, and small business technology transfer. It gives out grants in that value and contracts to over 5,000 companies every year. Without that, our world would have not seen some of the great innovations of the 20th and the 21st century. The second piece I would like to address is on the accountability side of things. It always needs to be a very transparent, independent process, free from interference. One that grants awards in phases, only when specific milestones have been achieved. So, for example, the US SBR process, right? Taking that as an example, all of the departments, whether it's the Department of Defense, whether it's Health and Human Services, whether it's the Space Agency, scientists in all those departments, come up with forward-leaning research, and these projects are openly listed. And there's a very open and a public process for granting these awards to the most qualified applicants. And of course, there are eligibility requirements, right? It has to be a US company, it has to have less than 500 people, etc., making sure that these innovation grants go to the right people and foster innovation throughout the community. So again, the idea is R&D part of it, so the concept and prototype, the grants are not for product development or commercialization, right? So that ensures that particular piece. But I think all companies themselves, they can follow a very similar model, and many of them do. Google, Apple, IBM, Intel, all of these companies, they have fund their own R&D and essentially follow a very similar model. Ideas get listed, they get prioritized, and they get awarded through a very transparent and independent process. So I'll leave it at that. Access and accountability, I think they're two important things. The third one, maybe you can cover later. Entrepreneurial leadership is the third one that I would address later.
Okay. Thank you, Milan. So, coming to you, you have been working on a lot of programs, innovation programs, and industry connect and things like this. So, just taking the cue from what Mr. Melam said, what do you think should be the attributes of an efficient innovation system? How do we look at that?
There has to be a certain level of freedom of thought that needs to be there for any innovation to happen. Actually, large organizations by their nature have a certain inertia and are, they need to have that kind of, they have to curb any unnecessary, chaos. So they need to have people who follow a certain line, which of course curbs innovation in a way. But looking at the way the product life cycles are getting shortened, even large companies have now, have the need to innovate. Of course, there is innovation happening in the R&D departments and all, but that kind of philosophy has to creep down to the, even to the front line, where people have to look at opportunities, and the communication of course has improved now so much that from the front line to the CEO, the information can pass really very fast without any distortion, and decision can be taken very fast. But these legacy issues are there. Large companies take a long time to move due to the inertia that they have. So the freedom of thought, I would say, is one of the most important features that has to pervade throughout the organization, and that has to find expression. And any opportunity that is spotted at any level needs to be communicated around in the organization, and the strength, of course, is that they are able to convert that opportunity into something profitable. So, of course, smaller companies are able to do that. So, a strong R&D, of course, helps, and it's a combination of several things. The ability of people to spot opportunities, think through for solutions to that. Within, of course, all companies have a certain amount of limitations, and within those limitations, they have to find a solution and get it to the market as quickly as possible before some other more nimble competitor gets to it first.
Okay. Thank you, Sams. I think two things that I would probably take from what you said, very nice thoughts, by the way. So I think the freedom to fail fast, and probably the agility to make decisions fast. I think that's what I could take as two strong points from what you mentioned. So thank you for that. So, so the question to you is, so I work with a lot of innovative companies, and one observation that I have is a lot of times there is a big disconnect between the innovation function in the organization and the executionist team, which is probably the engineering or the development team. So they work in silos or they go in parallel streams. So how do you think, or what should companies do to reduce this kind of a disconnect between the innovation function and the people who execute that?
I totally agree with you. And I've had few examples of that while I performed in my function. It's given there would be disconnect, especially for an emerging market or for developing countries where the innovation role is still burgeoning. We are still trying to get a hang of it. So there's always that disconnect between the innovation function and the regular workforce. So and what I did was to improve communication, because when you're able to improve communication, they are able to understand what you want, what you're looking for, what you're measuring, or what you're scoring, and the impact that you're also trying to get from the innovations as well. And communication is very key. And what we did was that we had to introduce newsletters where we would communicate to the organization every month and have them be abreast of the activities we've done over the month or over the period. or innovations that have happened. And then another thing is upskilling, which is very vital. I mean, you need to be sure that your workforce that digitally fits. And when you have courses around design thinking, which helps as well, because we had a design thinking activity ideation session where we did it in a very informal manner because we wanted to be out of the office space to inspire innovation. So when the workforce are able to apply design thinking skills to problems or challenges they might have, it helps a lot. It makes your job a lot easier. So upskilling is very key. And then another thing is you need to have executive buy-in. And that is one thing I'm very proud of Access Bank. There is an executive buy-in when it comes to innovation. We are always ready to jump on the next opportunity. We're always ready to innovate. And that comes also with the ideation campaigns that we have. We ran an ideation campaign around remote work when the pandemic started. Wanted to know how we can improve on that as well. So, and then for digital banking as well. And when you have executive buy-in for that, it helps a lot because now you're driving innovation from the up to the bottom. It's not from bottom up because if it's from bottom up, you struggle a lot and that can be very frustrating. So executive buy-in is very key. And then the company culture is very important. Before you run an innovation team or before you have an innovation function, you must align that with your innovation culture or your innovation strategy. What works in Bank A might not work in Bank B. The cultures are different. So if you have a culture where the staff or the employees are not open to change, that would be very difficult. So you need to create a digital transformation strategy in that regard. You need to change the culture mindset first before you proceed to running an innovation function. And then another thing that is very vital, apart from running the culture or changing the mindset as well, you also have to be persistent as the innovation team. Innovation can come with a lot of frustration, especially when there are projects that you have and you have to work on them and there are tons of them and IT is overwhelmed. If you don't have that persistence and when you don't have the ability or the skill to manage people, then that would be a problem. So you should be able to have that skill, that people management skill in summary, because you're able to talk to them, you're able to ask them, you're able to follow up properly, and then that helps your function as well. So when you have all this in place, I trust me, it would be more seamless for you. The bottlenecks will be there, but always have that strategy and the structure in place, and that would work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette. So, Kate, do you want to add anything more to what Jeanette was talking about?
Oh, sorry, what was he talking about?
There we go. Some really good points. I think
I'll talking about how to reduce the disconnect between the innovation team and the engineering and other departments.
Yes, some really good points. So I'll just add a couple points of emphasis from the work that we see. One is I cannot applaud Jeanette enough for making the point around persistence. This is certainly not a case where a strategy gets put in place and it self-runs. It is likely to require change management, patience, pivots along the way, and so certainly executive leadership buy-in, but then also the resiliency and persistence of those who are the day-to-day champions of innovation within the firm is critical. The second point is, we at Mass Challenge work with the teams tagged as the innovation teams out in the world, right? For them, it's very clear what innovation looks like or compared to others in the firm. But with that said, we firmly believe that all individuals within a firm can be entrepreneurs in their own way. And that doesn't mean that everyone's responsible for transformational, innovation. But if you think about bringing skill sets like design thinking into day-to-day work, or even sort of more basically a 5% improvement mind frame all of a sudden everyone in the workforce is open to doing things a little bit differently, and that can make a big difference on the margin. You know, the last thing I'll add is as we think about breaking down the barriers between the innovation function and the regular workforce, we also often encourage, you know, our innovation counterparts to get their colleagues out of the office and into the world. And so there are ways to engage with the startup, the technology, the innovation community, whether it's joining meetups, whether it's mentoring startups, whether it's raising your hand to advise technically on an early stage company. And even that sort of practice of getting out of your silo and into the world has been shown to increase openness to new ideas and awareness of what else is coming and of the opportunity there. So, you know, that's the other piece that I would add.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kate. So, Smalam, coming back to you. Again, another observation that I have is that a lot of organizations want to be innovative, and they start with a lot of innovation programs, conduct ideation workshops, and does hackathons and things like that. But after 3 months, 6 months time frame, the operational chaos takes precedence. All the innovation activities fizzle out, and then innovation goes takes a back seat. So, why do you think the sustenance is a major challenge, and how do you think this can be addressed by organizations?
Yeah, I'm out of mute now. I've seen different models in play, and there's no one size fits all. You know, as the panelists mentioned earlier, the executive leadership who best understands the company culture, they will have to make a choice of what is going to best suit them. But I'll give you some examples of things that you've seen work. On one extreme end, there are companies like Google, you know, who are known for innovation, and they clearly set aside, you know, time, and they value the time that the employees put in, 15, 20% cut out for them for innovation. This may not work for everybody, right? Some companies are, you know, outsource their innovation to other firms with niche expertise. So you can just think of them as consultants kind of complementing them with expertise that they don't have, where they need to do some exploration. Some choose to create a small fund, right, that invests in startups, and they literally outsource that innovation out to the startups. And some others, you know, outsource the innovation fund to an incubator or a venture firm as a service, which in turn sources startups, manages it for them, you know, with a little bit of oversight from the company. And then there are companies like IBMs and Intels of the world, you know, with their well-known research departments, which are completely independent facilities with dedicated research. So there are many different models, you know, that people have pursued, and there is really no one size that fits all. But I think where there's a will, there's a way, and you know, many people associate innovation with risk. Of course, there is a risk, you know, with innovation. But the risks don't have to be taken in isolation. What I mean by that is, we talked about government grants and loans, right? If you're familiar with those processes, you can certainly take advantage of that. You can partner with educational institutions. Many large companies partner with them. You can partner with other companies, and there are great examples. You know, standards bodies, open source projects. These are partnerships. These are innovations that are happening even with competitors combined, right? So there are many ways to explore innovation, and it just doesn't mean that you know, it has to be this way or that way, right? Again, if there's a will, there's a way.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm coming to you. So there are a lot of development happening with robotics, AI, ML, IoT, data science, and things like that. So, how do you think these things are affecting the business from an innovation standpoint? Are companies able to cope up with these sort of quick changes in the market?
These are definitely very disruptive changes. And we should understand that all innovation in a way is disruptive and does affect a very settled kind of hierarchy, and a lot of people are insecure with innovation. So it needs a lot of retraining and upgrading of skills within an organization to be able to absorb these. So people should not feel threatened that this is something that will take away their livelihood, or this is something that they cannot cope up with. So and without people, these don't work at all. So people are very much required, but people have to be retrained, and they have to upgrade their skills to be able to match up to the requirements of the market now.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Som. So, Jannat, coming to you. At CIMSME, we believe that innovation and technology should impact the lives of people, even at the grassroots level. So, is it possible to lead in technology innovation and anticipate the needs and experiences of the people of the future while we have a positive social impact in mind? How does that work? Okay, maybe you can just reconnect. We'll come back to you. So, Kate, coming to you, so you have been working with a lot of innovation centers and investments and things like that. So, what advice would you like to give to companies if they want to make the most out of their investment into innovation centers?
Sure, that's it's a really important question, and certainly a trend we've seen over the past couple of years leading into the pandemic was investment in physical innovation centers and innovation hubs as a way to announce a company's presence.
Can you hear me?
Create the space. Oh.
Yeah, then we'll come back to you in a minute.
It's such an important question around impact and innovation, and so I do want to defer.
We'll come back to you in a minute, Jen.
Go ahead, Jeanette.
No, I think we'll go back to her. We'll continue with your question. Yeah. Kate, you can continue. We'll go back to you.
I'm so sorry. Today isn't my lucky day. Can you hear me now?
No, yeah, we can hear you. We'll come back to you in a minute once we finish with Kate's question.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. A couple things that I would recommend around innovation centers. One is companies need to be really clear about the goal. Otherwise, it can be very high cost, especially if there's space involved. And so the types of goals that we hear across our partners are about creating space for collaboration, creating space to showcase innovation to customers, centers to actually conduct R&D, including collaborating with academia or others. Also about sort of market presence and branding and providing a space for new emerging talent or teams to get to know the company. All of those goals are important and business relevant, but it's, there's sort of endless opportunities related to an innovation center, and we've seen over time centers open and then close and open then close, and so to create a more sustainable center, just be intentional about the goal and the outcomes you're looking for. The other thing I'll add is that we have learned a lot this year about operating virtually. And so I think that will call into question or raise new opportunities around what a center actually means and how you can create virtual hubs that, have the benefit of that density and that sort of touch and feel experience, but also maximize what we're experiencing here today, which is global connectivity. And I'm very excited to see that come through in the next iteration of the Innovation Center.
Thank you, Kate, for that insightful. We are running out of time, so let me quickly recap what we discussed. So first of all, it was great having all of you with us today, and I'm sure our audience has also immensely benefited from your vast experience and expertise on innovation and related things that we talked about. So we'll look forward to engaging with all of you in the future and collaborating and creating a lot of innovations together. So thank you for the session. So quickly, what I could takeaway from this session, so one is innovation always starts from the top. So the executive leadership or the entrepreneur leadership should take the initiative and push it down. That's what one thing that we could take away. And we also talked about access to technology and funds that actually matters when it comes to successful innovation. Another one was communication, definitely, and collaboration between teams and between organizations. So that's a great thing. And freedom of thought and the agility to make decisions was another great point that we could get from this. And I think the design thinking came out to be one of the techniques that needs to be used for most of the organizations for bringing in innovation there. So thank you once again to all the speakers. Great pleasure having all of you, and all the best and a good day to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vijay, and thank you so much for joining us, all the panelists. Now we'll take one more break and we'll be back for the next session on how to build successful innovation ecosystem, best practices from Asia Pacific.